Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Caregiver Café workshop offered through the Caregiver Information and Support Center. We are a program of the Saskatoon Council on Aging that is also known as SCOA. SCOA is a community-based, not-for-profit organization that is dedicated to healthy aging and the well-being of older adults age 55 plus. Today, Marianne Parker will be presenting on care mapping, who can I turn to when I need help. Before we get started, it's important to acknowledge the traditional territories of the First Nations and Métis people who have lived on and cared for this land for thousands of years. We recognize that we are on Treaty 6 territory and that Saskatchewan is the homeland of the Métis Nation. We honor and respect the Indigenous peoples who have been here since time immemorial and who continue to shape the culture and identity of this place we call Saskatchewan. SCOA's mission is to promote dignity, well-being, and independence through education, programs, and support services for older adults. SCOA is an advocate for age-friendly policies that support healthy and positive aging within Saskatoon and the Saskatchewan area. At the Caregiver Information and Support Center, we are committed to providing valuable information and unwavering support to caregivers in our community. Our mandate is simple. We're here to respond to caregiver needs by providing easy access to information, social and emotional support, coordination of resources, and developing a caregiver community network. We are committed to supporting those who care for their loved ones and making your caregiving journey more manageable and rewarding. Your dedication is our inspiration, and we're here to ensure you have the resources and support you need. My name is Michaela Hazel, and I work at the Saskatoon Council on Aging as a caregiver coordinator in the Caregiver Information and Support Center. And it is my pleasure to introduce and welcome Marianne Parker.
Thanks, Michaela. Thrilled to be here. Yes, coming from Treaty 6 and the homeland of the Métis, and happy to be sharing some information that I have found in my journey through various caregiving forays. I am a caregiver. I currently look after my mom, and I have my son and his children in the basement suite. So we have four generations in one household. So that's largely where I'm coming from. I also work for the Sask Hospice and Palliative Care Association, and so do a ton of advocacy, networking, and education about end-of-life care. So the tool today I'm going to be sharing with you is a care map. And it is as simple as it sounds. It does not require any major artistic skill in case there's anybody there having a quiet panic. It basically helps put down visually things that you may already know. It may help highlight some things that you have yet to find out about. So we're going to go through this together. I realize that you will be going through this a little bit after the fact, so please, part of this is I'm going to try and go as slowly as I can, but obviously you can stop and pause and take all the time you need. So here we go. Enough about me. I'll leave this up on the screen a little bit. I have talked about me. I don't like to talk about me, but I have made it my career, my passion, my raison d'etre to be someone who explores caregiving, end-of-life care roles, and much more. So this is not my tool. This is something that I stumbled across in various conferences and in being coached myself. And so I just want to share it with those of you watching. So the background to the care mapping tool can be found through atlasofcaregiving.com. It's out of the States. And they did a lot of work with folks just trying to develop something simple and effective that helped people map out where they were and where they needed to be. And Pallium Canada has adapted this for Canadian audiences. If you are interested, a quick Google of Pallium Canada and care mapping will bring up a ton of resources as well. But I'm hoping just this basic presentation will take you through the basics and get you started. So what do you need? You need a pen or a pencil, and you need a sheet of paper. Preferably a sheet of paper that is, about 8.5 by 11, something that will give you a bit of space. If you tend to worry about messes, please don't. This is not meant to be the next wall of art hanging from your wall. It's meant to be something you can refer to, though. So if it does get a bit out of hand, maybe a second sheet of paper might be appropriate. But honestly, we are going to keep this as simple as possible, but here's a few guidelines as we move forward. It's worth thinking about, is this going to be your care map? So people who are taking care of you, who cares for you and all of the people around you? Or are you going to look at this from the perspective of if you provide care to someone else? Both are perfectly fine. It's just that it will have a slightly different look. In a way, it's nothing to worry about, because even if you do it for someone else and you are a significant caregiver, you will focus on the map. You will be on the map in a very prominent way, anyways. But it's good to decide that going in. Whose care map are you doing? Yours or the person you care for? Okay, start there. And once you've decided that, we are going to draw a box that looks like a house in the center of our page. Again, no stressing over artwork here, folks. It's a square box, if that's all you can manage. Perfect. Plunk it in the middle of the page and put either yourself, if it's your care map, or put the person to whom you provide care. Like, who's the center of attention here, basically? Who's in that box, right? That's going to be home. And so that person sitting there in the home is the primary person we're care mapping for. Okay. So once you've got that, we of course have to look at that home. Is there anyone else in the home? See, they're dancing in the kitchen according to this slide. So if not, that's okay. Don't put people in there that don't live there. That'll come soon. But if, let's say, you are caregiving and that person is living with you, put them in home. Even if there's renters in the basement, we need to just put somewhere that there's other people in the home, and we'll see later. But if it's just you, that's okay too. That's where we start. So let's just represent the home as it actually is. Okay? Dancing in the kitchen and everything. All right. Now we're going to put other people. We're going to add other people now. But one of the things to keep in mind is you're going to want to have something that represents how important the relationships are between you and these other people. So if they are really, really important, let's say you're doing a care map for your mama and you're the one that comes in every day to make sure she's okay, that's going to need a thick, solid line, because that's something that happens every day and it's incredibly important, right? So maybe you're going to use a thick, solid line for people like that. Maybe there's some folks that the relationship is important, but it can be like a thinner line or a dashed line. So the relationship is important and you see them fairly frequently, but they're not in every day. So an example would maybe be your family physician or your pharmacist or the neighbor that drops off food once a week. Whomever it is, there might be some relationships that are important, but they're not that thick, solid line because that person isn't coming in today. Similarly, if you are receiving care from home care aides or home care, that might actually be a thick, solid line because they're coming in every day and they're part of your system of care. But this is up to you. It's just a matter of showing yourself and sort of getting a sense of who are the important relationships. And I don't mean important in how valuable they are to you, right? But how important they are in your care map. And then you're going to want other ways of indicating if someone is important, but sort of you only see regularly. And you might want like just dotted lines or something very faint for people that you know are in and around you and could maybe be called upon once in a while, but they haven't been um, called upon yet, right? And let's be aware that there may be some folks, and we'll get to that in a little while, who are perhaps in your system, but you're not actually sure what kind of line to use, and that's perfectly fine. Just leave it without a line. What I have here is a two-way arrow, and that's for folks where, sometimes we may be taking care of someone, but in a way they take care of us as well. So, if you're like me, I'm looking after my mama. I am looking after her for sure, but sometimes being able to go and sit with her and have a game of Scrabble or have a pot of tea together is actually really good for me too. And it's important to recognize those mutual caring relationships as well. So, you may look after your mom and you may be in the home and your spouse and you take care of each other. That's important to indicate because we're trying to hold up what may already be in place, right? So we'll unpack this a little bit more, but just come up with a little way that you can recognize the different kinds of relationships that you have. Okay, and then we'll move forward. So hopefully you've got that in place and we will move on to the next step. You'll see on the screen sort of an example of of a care map that's been done, and you can sort of see the house there, and you can see a house to the side of it, and maybe a house that's a little further away, and you can sort of see those dotted lines. This is what we're going for. Okay. So if you've done your main home, and you see there's one there that's got about 5 people in it, including Spot the dog. Um, Feel free to put animals in there. They may be supporting you, right? It's still care. Um, but now it's important to kind of go beyond the home or the room or wherever home is and to start plotting some of the other things that take care of either you or take care of the person that you're taking care of. So you're doing another layer here. And this may take a little longer, because you need to think creatively, right? It could be, as they've got down here, a support group that or an activity group. It doesn't even have to necessarily be, a formal support group. It could be your quilting group. It could be the local QP meetings. It doesn't matter. There's collegiality, there's connection, there's perhaps people going through similar things as you. That's worth putting on your map because whether we realize it or not, these are sources of information, support, emotional support, distraction, you name it. And if you don't have any and you can't think of any, now might also be a time to draw one with a dotted line or something really faint as something that you're missing or something that you wish that you had, if you think of it at this point. But then we have to sort of ascertain or decide how strong that relationship is, right? So thinking back to that other slide, we did the solid lines. You can see Christy and Mike really support each other and it's a mutual thing. And then Christy and the relationship with Pablo is really strong. Might be a son. Then there's the daughter-in-law, right? A little less of a relationship because different dynamic. So this is what you're trying to do is just sort of identify all the different people that you come into contact with. And, immediate is usually the easiest. And then we expand out and identify how important they are. This is your system. This is your care system. So obviously at any time, please pause the video and take some time to do this and really look. And if this is the time sometimes you can have a great conversation with let's say Christy and Mike were doing this together. They could sit down and chat about, well, am I missing anything? Have I forgotten anything? Feel free to do this care map over a few days as you think about things and as days unroll. Okay. So we're going to go through it in its entirety, but maybe you want to take some time to do each of these steps. So, okay, you've got your support groups down. You've got maybe if you're looking after parents, maybe you've got your children that are in the house, and each one of them you'll have a slightly different relationship with, or they're at a different life stage, and all of that needs to be reflected. And there may be grandchildren, there may be cousins, family. Let's make sure all of these folks are listed somewhere. And you can see on the map here, this example, they've got this is from the Atlas Caregiving website. They've got different cities, even not uncommon in this day and age, where the hometown may be in one province and kids are scattered all over the country, right? So they're still there in this day and age. There's technology we can use for connection and so on, right? So important that they be reflected. So that's basically what we're working on, or just establishing those every day, every week, every month. Yearly is starting to push it, but you know what I mean? Connections that we run into on a fairly regular basis. You've done family and you've done maybe some of the more obvious ones. I just want to draw attention to some of the ones that need to be on there as well. Things like family physicians, pharmacists, where you get medications for either yourself or the person you're looking after. Any the grocery store where perhaps the cashier knows you. Anywhere you go where you have a sense of familiarity is appropriate. That needs to be on your map. Because again, it's a connection. We're looking at connections and people that may know you and provide a sense of connectedness and belonging in you as well. So going to the same grocery store, that's an important connection. Going to the same pharmacist. Again, these would probably at this point for sure be dotted lines because again, um, they may not happen as frequently, but they're certainly there. Another one to think about too that I didn't have on my map until someone pointed it out was the hairdresser that I go to. I love going to see her. We chat, we talk about each other's lives, we support each other in some of the things that are happening. That's an important connection to have on your map. So might be your massage therapist, your physiotherapist, um, social worker if you have one, a really good friend that may not be family and may not live near you, but you know that you can go out for coffee with occasionally. All of these folks can be mapped. And I'm hoping that one of two things is happening. Number one, you're seeing just how many people you are connected with on a daily basis. And some of those relationships, I can assure you, probably will ebb and flow and become different as time goes on, but they can sometimes be a huge sense of emotional support, if nothing else. The other thing is that maybe someone watching this who goes, I don't have very many people on my map. The whole point of this is to not say whether having a lot of people or two people is right or wrong. Everything is important. You may have two really strong relationships that provide you with most of what you need. The only thing that this map might point out to you, though, are some of the connections that you may not have fully realized you had, and also where there may be some gaps that you could potentially fill moving forward. But having two big major connections or 20 is merely a reflection of who you've been to date and who you are. And there's no right or wrong answer or right or wrong map. I would, at this point now, your map might be getting a little bit busy, but I would also invite you to think of ways that you get information and emotional support that are not necessarily physical. So, for example, if you attend these caregiver cafes, that should be on your map as a source of information and emotional support. Community centers that you may frequent, the library, any kind of place where you go to get information or to have fun, frankly. Even the places that, if you go down to the river valley for um, a walk and you're able to do that once a week, there could be a box on your care map that's like outdoors or outdoor time. What we're essentially trying to do is, as in this picture, there may be someone at the center. It may be you or the person you're taking care of, but through networks of other people, we will see that we actually are supported by a whole community. And it may not be that we have ever necessarily phoned up our neighbor down the street to, come over for a cup of coffee. That's just fine. Maybe you're not going to be coffee friends, but if the chips were down and you really needed someone to get some groceries for you and you were really stuck, maybe that neighbor could be someone that you could walk over and ask to give you a hand. Or maybe that's someone you could see having over for coffee once a week and commiserating on where you live in the city and how hard it is to get around. So, what we're trying to identify is that there may be people on your map that are a dotted line that could become a closer together dashed line. There could be folks that you only see once a month that actually you could cultivate a little more. But we aren't going to truly understand who we have in our lives until we see it. And that's the power of this tool. When I did my map, I had, my grandchildren on there. And at first, I really didn't have any lines between me and them because they're little. How could they possibly be helping me with anything? Until one of them got to be 4 or 5 years old and was able to run downstairs and grab me a glass of water, or was able to go and grab the mail for me and absolutely loved to help Nana in that way. And then suddenly I am being taken care of, right? In a small way. And emotionally, that's huge. So we need to look at all of the different ways that we can engage our network. And I'm thinking by now, everyone's map is going to look slightly different. So I'm going to take a moment to stop sharing and I'm going to invite the few people in the room here with me to, if they're willing, hold up their maps. And I just want to give a sense of how different they can look. So I'm just going to stop sharing. And if we can sort of show some, this should be captured in Zoom. There's Jenny's. Yeah, okay, there's the house right in the center, and there you can see there's a few things drifting off to the side. And so it's and kind of sort of showing that things are getting further and further away. So there might not be some direct linkages there. Brilliant. Are there any others? If not, we'll continue going. It's just fine. It also gives those of you watching this after the fact a sense of, okay, I can stop here and keep working on my um, map myself. And mine is very condensed because I have 4 generations in one house, and that gets very, very complicated very quickly. But it also makes for some lovely, rich relationships, right? So it will look completely different from Jenny's. Okay, I'm going to go back to the slides for a sec here. So let's look at this care map in a little more detail because I wanted just one bigger picture of it so you can see. So you've seen Jenny's and mine's probably all of this stuff in the center here. But you can see how there's different people that are way off to the side. Steve and Claire in Philadelphia, and they're actually more in contact with Maria and Manny than they are with Christy and Mike, who might be doing the care map. But that's okay because we also know that via Maria, Steve might be an excellent source of legal advice or business advice. Who knows that perhaps Manny is good friends with doctors Sandover, Miller, and can get some medical advice from time to time, and that filters through the network, right? So again, mapping it allows you to see 2 things: the validate and really applaud the relationships that exist, and also indicate some that may not be kind of used as much as they could be, right? How often do we sort of invite Cindy over for supper? Might be really nice to hear that she's going through something similar so we could provide each other emotional support. Maybe Angela in Princeton is off studying, but on her break wouldn't mind coming home and providing an afternoon of respite care if we got everything set up for her. But have we asked, right? So these are the key components of connection and care, that they can happen in a variety of circumstances. And we perhaps in our perhaps over be feeling overwhelmed, or in just feeling stuck, we don't often see what we have, and appreciate what we can leverage in the existing system. And I know leverage sounds a little bit, really? Can I use people like that? But the point is, I think we often make huge assumptions that we can't ask for things and assume that we're going to be a burden. But a lot of folks are more than willing to help out, especially if it's in a manageable way. And if we let it sort of be a mutual kind of coming to an understanding that, if I want you to come over for an afternoon just so I can go out and get some grocery shopping, it does not have necessarily have to suddenly become a regular every week thing. Let's just do it instance by instance. Um, I think it's also a good thing here, especially if you have done a care map where you are looking after someone else, to make sure that you've got a lot of solid lines looking after you, because that is going to be key, right? We can't look after others until we're being taken care of. And are you using your support network as much as you could be? So it may be nothing to do with actual physical or mental caregiving. It could be that maybe you make it a monthly occurrence that you go out with one of your kids for breakfast, just to have a break and a distraction from what is going on, right? So this tool really helps you, I hope, identify those kind of relationships that you're perhaps not as diligent in maintaining for your own sake, let alone anyone else's. And I'm hoping too that if you're in a caregiving situation, that this kind of care mapping tool validates you and how much you actually do for the other people in your life, because this is important, valuable, necessary work. But it's work, and it can be really tough at times, and it can also be really joyful at times. And celebrating each element of it and really validating how much you're putting into it is really important. So hopefully by this time you've had a chance to do a first rough draft. Obviously, go back to the beginning, redo it, think about it, redo it. The whole point is that this was not meant to be a complicated, fill out many, many different layers and not understanding it. The simpler, the better in some respects. But before we finish up, now we're going to start looking at some of the gaps, which I've partly talked about in saying, are you actually understanding how much you do? Are there ways you can reach out to others to support you? But now is the time that perhaps in a different color pen or in a different line, you start identifying some of the things that might be missing, and maybe shade them in. And those can be something that you work on to extend your network. So if you were suddenly to, block off, let's say, Maria and Manny, would the system for Christy and Mike be able to shift and replace Maria and Manny even for a short time? Right? These are the kinds of things to look at in all of your solid relationships, ones with the solid arrows or the strong relationships. If something were to happen and that was to be removed for a while, do you have a plan to replace those? Again, it could be they just go on vacation for a week. or one of them gets sick for a week. Does your system allow for shifting and support? Are there other things like short-term respite care at a facility, bringing in some private care, engaging other members of the family? Is there a backup plan that you could potentially put into place? And that's always good for, getting some conversations around what would this look like, so that when the time comes, if it happens, you're not scrambling, right? So can your map shift and accommodate other ways of getting support and care? This is a great starting point then of then going out and finding out and educating ourselves and informing ourselves about what other resources are available. Again, engaging our network, not necessarily in care, but in what they know and they understand is available out there. Joining caregiver cafes and asking questions about, has anybody heard of question mark? Have you asked everybody on that map about how they could help? Have you gone out of your comfort zone and taken your grandson for breakfast and said, once in a while, Grandpa would love to play Scrabble. You up for that? We often get held back. We wait for people to offer, but a lot of times they're waiting for us to ask. So having those conversations and, as I said earlier, not necessarily locking folks in, but just inviting them to be more of a part of the care and framing it as such can be very validating for them as well. And so we really need to look at what parts of our map could be further strengthened. So while you're doing this, you're focusing on people and some of the people that you can leverage a little more. What about some of the practical resources out there that we might not even thought about? When I think of groceries, I think of going grocery shopping. In a way, it's a great connection to have. It's a it's a way of getting out of the house and interacting with folks. But let's say you're in the middle of a really stressful week of caregiving and you're tired. Is there a way of signing up for a grocery delivery? Is there a way of asking someone to pick up ready-made meal for you? This is, maybe the grandson could do that on his way home from work. Um, do some of your service providers, like your massage therapists or your hairdressers, offer in-home service? And if not, planting a seed might be kind of a neat thing to do. Um, is there equipment rentals that you may not be aware of that could make life a lot easier in the home? Respite care that comes into the home, et cetera, et cetera. Let's look at some of the way, I have to say, a lot of the home delivery, like Amazon, and it's made a lot of things more accessible to folks that cannot get around and are not easily mobilized. So let's make sure we use also the practical things in society that we already have and make them work for us a little bit as well, right? A lot of medications can be delivered. Medications, many of you may already know, bubble packed and sent, and they're all ready to go. So the more we use these services, the more they're going to expand, but they also just make life easier. And we should give ourselves permission to use those, and not consider them shortcuts. Consider them as part of your care essentials. That having some things delivered frees up more energy to do other caregiving, and that is part of the whole picture. So this brings me to the end of the care mapping exercise. Again, I do encourage you, after you have done your first iteration, your first version, don't worry about it being messy, but maybe it's got you thinking and you want to start over and maybe redo it. Go a little slower, really start plotting some of those um, people and services that you have either taken a part advantage of, but not full, or haven't even thought about. And let's use this tool as a way of increasing our understanding of what we have and what we need. So, thank you so much for sticking with me today. I appreciate it. I'm going to stop sharing my slides and I'm going to go back to my very generous hosts to finish off here. I hope you've enjoyed it and hopefully we'll talk again soon. Thanks.
Marianne, on behalf of the Caregiver Center, we greatly thank you for the information and tool you have shared with us today. For those who are viewing, if you'd like any information or support about SCOA, and the Caregiver Center. We welcome you to stop by our office when it is safe to do so, Monday through Friday. Our hours are 8:30 to 4:30, but please note that we're closed over the noon hour. You can also contact us by calling our toll-free caregiver hotline at 188 652 4411. You can also contact us via email at caregiver@scoa.ca or visit our website at scoa.ca. We thank you very much for your interest in today's presentation. Please keep an eye out on our website for more information on our upcoming Caregiver Forum, and we hope to see you all at our next event. Thank you.